Hey there, Banditos. Welcome to the latest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits, where, as always, we fling open the doors of your local comic book shop and bring you interviews with your favorite comic book creators of yesterday and today. Today is no different. We're bringing you one of those great interviews, but like I said, it is the latest episode, but it is also the last episode of 2024, that is. And in the spirit of the season, we're bringing you an interview with someone who is a fan of comics, a fan of TV, a historian, if you will, of television. He is a collector just to the highest degree. We're talking about none other than Rick Goldschmidt. Rick collects just all kinds of stuff: comics, memorabilia, TV memorabilia, movie memorabilia. But more importantly, Rick is a Rankin and Bass historian. All those holiday shows that you see every year around this time: Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Year Without Santa, the list goes on. Frosty, that's one of my favorites. He is a guy who worked with Rankin and Bass and researched all that material and wrote many books on it. So we get into that, his work with Rankin and Bass, his collection, which, if you're fortunate enough to watch us on YouTube, you could see a lot of it behind him, and other stuff. So without further ado, let's get an interview. This is Rick Goldschmidt.
Rick Goldschmidt, sir, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we'll start with comics to begin with. There's a lot to cover. But just from seeing your posts on Facebook and stuff, I know you're a comic book fan. So how did this comic book fandom start for you?
Oh, with comic books, I guess when I was a little kid, when you got those March of Dime or March of what is it called? March of the little digest comic books,
Oh, yeah.
that you
Yep.
would get at the store. And I always loved comic books, particularly Batman and Spider-Man, Marvel and DC. So and then Rankin Bass actually did there was a Dell comic book on Mad Monster Party, which is kind of tough to find. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it. I loved Jack Kirby. I was lucky enough to meet him at the San Diego Comic-Con in 1990. And he was there, and I became friends with Steve Rude at that time. And then he introduced me to Alex Ross, who lives near me. So I know a lot of comic book artists, Bruce Timm, and people that are like more retro is what I'm interested in now. So I don't really collect comics so much anymore. Mostly the old reprints, and the omnibuses and so forth.
And what were some of the favorite titles? I know you mentioned Batman and stuff, but growing up, what were some of the ones that were your go-tos?
Well, I also liked all the funny comics, like Popeye and all of the different Hanna-Barbera comic books, the Gold Key television comic books. Those were the ones that I really collected. But the Marvel comics of the 60s is probably the pinnacle of comic book collecting for me. And then even though DC got kind of weird in the 60s, I liked all of those too. So it's funny though. I grew up in the 70s, and I got comic books in the early part of the decade, but I noticed the change in the art even as a young kid, and I preferred the older comic books, from the 60s. So even when I got back issues, I got the old, people would sell them at garage sales and things like that. So those were the ones that I really collected.
So I want to ask, obviously we're here because of your expertise as it pertains to Rankin and Bass. How did you first discover them?
Well, I watched them as a kid. You know, my mom would always tell us when the specials were going to be on. So it was always an event to watch it that one time a year. You know, and it really would put me in the spirit of the holiday. But I kind of put that on the back burner, and I didn't set out to become a historian or um, write books or anything. My degree's in illustration. I'm an artist, so I was interested in getting into humorous illustration, and I knew Jack Davis designed Mad Monster Party. So I asked him whatever happened to Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass, and he said he was still doing art for them periodically, and that I should give Paul Coker Jr. a call, who was another one of my favorite artists, you know, right out of Mad Magazine. And so I called Paul up, and he gave me Arthur's number in Bermuda. And Arthur spent his time between Bermuda and New York. So I called him up in Bermuda and I said, you know, it's funny, there should be a book about Rankin Bass because to me, they were like Walt Disney and Hanna-Barbera, but you really didn't hear much about them. You didn't know anything about them. So he said, send me 2 chapters. So I went home and back then we didn't have PCs. I had to go to a friend's house to use his PC and type out my 2 chapters, and I kind of cut and paste photographs and stuck them in with the text. And Arthur liked it, and he sent me his life story on a little micro cassette. And from there, I just started scrounging around trying to find everything I could find. And it took about 7 years to get it all together. And right before I finished, Arthur flew out to my home to see what I had and make sure that I was the right kind of guy to be doing this. And from there, he and Jules looked over the blue lines of my first book, and everything just kind of took off from there. After my book came out, a lot of people don't know this. There was no merchandising before the book came out, absolutely nothing. And this company called Stuffins had a copy of my book, and he took it on a flight to Japan for some kind of a toy fair. And he came up with the idea to do beanbag dolls with CVS pharmacies. And he sent me the dolls prior to them being released in the store just to see what I would think of them. And he sent sets for my kids. And from there, all of this merchandise just kind of exploded. And now you can walk into any store and find Rudolph and Frosty, and sometimes Santa Claus is coming to town, and they're everywhere.
I want to ask about your so you have an amazing collection behind you. And did your collecting kind of inspire your love for Rankin and Bass and moving into that kind of being, the guru of that, or did one inspire the other? Because you clearly have a lot of merchandise that's belongs to that, plus like amazing stuff. I mean, if I could just blow up my screen, I could just scan everything here. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I think my collecting took off far greater after I became the Rankin Bass historian because I'm interested in a lot of different things. I don't just collect Rankin Bass. In fact, I gave a lot of my Rankin Bass stuff away to family members and friends. I designed some of the figurines for UNESCO, and they used to send me a big box of Enesco figurines at Christmas time. And I didn't have the room to put everything up, so I either gave it away or sold it or whatever. So my interests are so varied, and my collection actually inspired the show Collector's Call with Lisa Welchel on MeTV, and I was the first episode that they shot for that series. Now they're on their seventh season. So my collection has different things in it, like Batman 66 stuff, monkey stuff. Um, just looking around, I have a lot of Martin and Lewis. It's so varied. It's not really all Rankin Bass, even though I have a lot of that too. But I've always been interested in collecting. It's just, it kind of became more of a museum type house after I did the Rankin Bass books because it inspires me to do the things that I do. I like to look at it and I don't really care about the value of it. I'm not someone that, is like, I can't take that out of the box because that's going to be worth whatever. I'm mostly interested in it for the visual effect. So I just enjoy it, and people come over and they're like, "How do you clean this?" And you know, they ask me different questions about it, and I don't really even think about it. It's part of my life now.
I can respect that. I have a lot of shelf space up here with stuff, and that's why my wife keeps me in the basement.
Yeah.
Next question I have before I let Oren jump in here is you have just man, I can't stop staring at all your collection. I gotta say, it's pretty amazing. From one collector to another, is there a point where you think you want to, you know, you want to part ways with your collection and move on to another chapter of your life and kind of move beyond that?
Well, I've thought about it. Women definitely don't like like all this clutter, but I don't know. It's like I have a lifetime invested in it, and it's my only really thing that I do with my collect, with my money and things like that. I'm not going out drinking or, you know, spending it on all kinds of frivolous things. I don't buy fancy cars and things like that. So it's more of just something to look at that I enjoy. So I look at it like that. I don't really think about, selling it. I don't even think this is the right market anymore to sell the stuff in. It seems like the at least my generation is starting to not. It seems like a lot of people do get rid of their collections, um, when they get older, and it's not. I don't know. It's not worth as much as it used to be. Um, Certain things are kind of dying off. Like when I started collecting, there were certain things from way before my time, like Howdy Doody. And, there's in Chicago, we had these kids shows, Garfield Goose and Friends and Bozo Circus. And that stuff used to be really hot where you couldn't touch it for under $500, certain things. Now it's like even the museum in Chicago is gone now. So it's like you run into all these different things where the market isn't there anymore. So I'm not really looking to get rid of stuff. It's just part of my life, I guess, my daily life.
I get it. And it could also be more expensive sometimes than drinking or buying cars. So I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to talk some more about the Rankin Bass stuff, but you had just mentioned you had Monkeys memorabilia, and myself as a huge Monkeys fan, what's the coolest piece of Monkeys memorabilia that you have?
Well, I was lucky to meet them all,
Mhm.
and I saw them all perform live individually, and probably the best performance I saw was at the Chicago Theater in I think it was 2012
Mhm.
when Mike first came back out with them, and they were great. Um, I just got a Gretsch 12 string that's exactly like Mike's was. So I guess that would be my favorite thing right now. I have a Monkees guitar and a lot of different things. In fact, the oldest thing that I hung on to was one of those Monkees Mattel puppets from when I was one.
Mhm.
My mom said that I liked the theme song and she bought me the monkey talking puppets, and I still have the one that I had when I was one.
Well, I've seen those around, and I'm always very jealous of folks who have them. And just speaking of Mike Nesmith, just my own little tangent here, but I don't think the music industry appreciates everything he did for country music and rock music and pop music uh, throughout his career. Just an incredible talent.
Yeah, he was probably my favorite of the group because he wrote the songs and produced them too. And he just had a great style to his songs that I always liked, even as a kid. So, but I like them all.
Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you. So let's talk some Rankin Bass for a second, because
Sure.
one thing about Rudolph and a lot of the things is it was a stop motion uh, photography they were using to create these movies and shows. And as I bore my children every time we watch Rudolph, that each little expression, each little movement took a whole lot of shots to make that all happen. What were some of the things that you learned about the production of these specials that you didn't know?
Well, Arthur Rankin went to Japan to bring the stop motion that Tadmo Shinaga did. He was the father of stop motion in Japan, and he was the one who basically directed Rudolph. And what I didn't know was that Arthur Rankin always went to Japan and oversaw the production. Jules Bass never went to Japan. So that's something that I found kind of interesting. Arthur loved the culture in Japan and spent a lot of time there. In fact, he lived there while they were making the New Adventures of Pinocchio, which was the first animagic series that they did. And they did that at Dentsu Studios. And one of my books is his scrapbook that he kept while he was doing the series. And he had to finance the series with bank loans, and he even borrowed a large sum of money from one of his friends out of the Navy, Donald Gladstone. I think it was $30,000 to finish Pinocchio. And he didn't like that arrangement too well because they didn't make that much in profit. Um, so that was concerning. And if he knew that if he wanted to keep the company going, he had to find some kind of a sponsorship. And GE became that sponsor. And in fact, they started their own division, which was called Tomorrow Entertainment, and financed all of the Rankin Bass productions from 64 to 74. So a 10-year span of not having to worry about the cash flow on all of the creative projects that they did. And they did a lot, in a short amount of time. Not only were they doing television specials, but they did Saturday morning series, and they did a feature film, well, several feature films in the 60s. King Kong Escapes. They did The Daydreamer, Willie McBean and His Magic Machine. I mean, they were doing a lot of stuff. Edgar Bergen even got them to produce a pilot, and that's a lost pilot that I haven't been able to see as of yet. But I think it's in the Bergen collection, and maybe one day that'll be let out. But they worked on all kinds of things, and most of the things that they did were successful. So that was kind of an interesting thing to see. You know, they didn't have too many failures. Um, and they basically were together for about 30 years. So that says a lot.
Now, would networks sometimes come to them and say, listen, we need something for the summer, or hey, we need something for maybe late fall? Or did they just pitch things to the different networks and say, hey, this is what we have going on. Would you be interested in it?
Well, they pitched things and it was easier to do back then.
Mhm.
And see, initially, what happened was Larry Romer, who was part of the Rankin Bass organization going back to 1960, he had a friend who worked at NBC. And that friend got Rudolph and Return to Oz and The Ballad of Smokey the Bear on NBC. Things started going awry with Larry Romer in even during Rudolph. They gave him the director's credit, even though he didn't direct Rudolph. They did that because he got it on the air. But he started acting irrational over things. One thing I know of is the audio. He said it had to all be redone and so on and so forth. And he called Bill Giles, the sound engineer, out and was yelling and screaming. Arthur and Jules just took him out to lunch and he didn't return. And they told the sound engineer, Bill Giles, to go home. Everything is fine. So things started going bad with Larry, and they worked with NBC through 1968. They did The Little Drummer Boy and Cricket on the Hearth and some other things for NBC. And then they decided, well, let's take these to the other networks. And CBS bought Frosty in 69, and ABC bought Santa Claus is Coming to Town in 70. And then that's why Rudolph was pulled off of NBC and brought to CBS, because their person at CBS wanted more specials, and in particular Rudolph. And they could do that because GE owned the special. So they moved it to CBS. And they began working primarily more with ABC than CBS. They made Rudolph's Shiny New Year, The Year Without a Santa Claus, The Leprechaun's Christmas Gold. A whole bunch of them went to ABC. So they kind of branched out. They didn't stay with any one network or any one production. They were trying a lot of different things. And then that's when they got into live action television movies for ABC. And they did The Bermuda Depths and The Last Dinosaur and a whole bunch of other ones.
Mm-hmm.
What are the quick question is, what are those, like, how do those rights stand nowadays? I thought I remember reading something about like certain shows being switched from one network to another. Are they still kind of spread out across the major networks?
Well, NBC is going to air Rudolph and Frosty this year. So they left CBS. And I think the reason was Universal owns NBC.
Right.
and they probably couldn't get the same deal that they wanted with CBS. CBS has been in kind of a shambles lately, and they lost the Grammy Awards too, and some other things. So I don't know what's going on there. But um, Universal owns the distribution rights of the early Rankin Bass, the first 10 years that I talked about. And then Warner Brothers owns the later ones. And they have yet to do a proper restoral of any of these shows. Um, they release stuff, 4K Blu-ray, but I've been watching those, and there's all kinds of mistakes and problems with them. So initially, Universal reached out to me, and they wanted me to be involved with everything, and then politics got involved, and then I wasn't involved with anything with the people that were working on this stuff. So far they're batting zero. They haven't done a good release of any of these shows with the proper lost scenes and all of that. And I fear that Friday night on NBC things aren't going to go well. They have it Rudolph in a 75-minute time slot, but I'm thinking that they're going to have people from their new NBC shows in between on the commercials talking about Rudolph and what they like about it. Because they haven't reached out to me to see what they should, what they could do to restore it to the 64 version. The biggest thing was the end credits from Rudolph in 64 had an elf throwing packages off with the credits on the packages. And a friend of mine has that in color. It just needs to be restored and color corrected. NBC or Universal, I don't think they have that footage. And they don't have some other footage either. And, all they really care about is the commercials that they can squeeze in on these things now. So it's kind of sad because I'm a historian and my books focus on all the people that made the shows last 60 plus years. And, you would like to see the Blu-rays and the DVDs and the television airings done right, but they never are, unfortunately.
Why do you think that's the case, though? I mean, we're not talking about, the director's cut of Jaws or something like that. These are, holiday shows that are beloved by everyone.
Right.
And this is not the first time I've heard about this too. Like, I got into a discussion that I was listening to on a podcast, and they were talking about how they cut off, and I'm going to butcher what they're saying, but basically the dialogue at the end of a particular scene, and it basically changes the whole kind of dynamic of what was happening, and they just kind of butcher these shows up. Do you feel like just they can do it because of the whimsical nature of the content, or they just I mean
they don't really care about the content. That's the problem. They see it as a way to get advertisers, and the advertisers aren't concerned with what scenes are in and what scenes are out. They just want their commercial to run in there. And last night they showed, it's a good example, Santa Claus is Coming to Town on ABC. So I turned it on and I just left it on, and it was the same edit they've been showing for probably the last 20 years. And right at the beginning, Fred Astaire starts talking, and then before you know it, the credits are going already. He just starts talking, and then they cut everything he says out, and it's the credits. And they cut out the song My World is Beginning Today that Jessica sings, which is one of the most moving songs in the special, and it's always missing on ABC. So it's just like it's not the same show that you're watching on the networks as what it was intended to be at the beginning. And I kind of compare Rudolph and the Rankin Bass specials to The Wizard of Oz. And look how many times The Wizard of Oz has been restored and put in the theaters and issued on Blu-rays and boxes and all kinds of stuff. And they give you everything with that, and they make sure that that is restored properly. But the Rankin Bass shows, they still haven't gotten on board with doing them right. And it's weird because I thought that would have been done back when my first book came out in 97. And we found a lot of the lost scenes at that time. And that's about all the restoral that it got was the scenes got put back in on the DVD and Blu-ray, but they've never really restored them properly, like gone back to the negative and done a tremendous job. It hasn't been done yet.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this year Rudolph is turning 60 and
Right.
Frosty is turning 50.
They look amazing, by the way.
Frosty is I don't know if it's 54 or 55.
Okay.
Because my book on Frosty came out in 2019, and that was the 50th anniversary.
Gotcha. Why do you think these shows are still appointment television for so many people around the holidays? And even, before the holidays, it still resonates with generations.
Well, as an artist, I was always drawn to the visual. The early work, Rudolph was Tony Peters, and the later work was Paul Coker Jr.
Mhm.
And the reason they've lasted so long is, when we were talking about Marvel Comics, the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby of Rankin Bass are Romeo Muller and either Tony Peters for Rudolph or Paul Coker Jr. for everything else. And they created the characters and the storyline that people can watch over and over and over again. And they really deserve a lot of the credit, because if Romeo didn't write for the entire family, Rudolph would have only lasted a few years like it was supposed to. GE only wanted it for a couple of years to promote their General Electric houseware division products. So, I mean, Romeo wrote these underdog characters that find their place in the world. And that's so much, it's so satisfying to watch that over and over again. And then he wrote with heart and warmth. So it gets you in the spirit of the holiday, because most of the things entertainment wise that you see today, everyone's got such a short attention span that they're making movies like Disney Plus movies and things like that are just like crazy visuals that are so fast and so crazy that it has no story content anymore. Rankin Bass specials aren't like that. They're more of like a classic movie, classic feature film that won an Academy Award. I was just thinking last night watching Santa Claus is Coming to Town. The songs are so good in that it's like Mary Poppins or the best musicals of days gone by. The songs are strong and the writing is great and the characters are visually attractive. So there's a lot of things going on with Rankin Bass.
100%. I just have I want to jump back for a second to a collector's question because We're Facebook friends. I see the stuff you post, and it's beautiful. It's in great condition. As a collector, we've noticed in comics, and I'm sure you've noticed too, grading has become the end all as far as comics go. It's getting into toys. Now it's VHS tapes. It's anything you can get your mind around. Where do you stand on the grading as far as, if something's not graded, people kind of look down their nose at it a little bit now?
I haven't really gotten into the grading thing. A friend of mine upgrades everything, and fortunately, when he has like a vintage puzzle or whatever, he'll send it to me because he got a better copy off of eBay. And I like that about it. But I'm not real particular about grading. A lot of times I'll, take a Sharpie marker out and fix things where you can't even tell there was a little crack in whatever. So I don't much care about grading. In fact, I don't even care if I have a repro of a box or a poster or whatever. As long as it looks good,
Right.
I'm fine with that. It's more the visuals that I care about.
So, excuse me, you mentioned your most prized monkey's possession being the guitar, but what would you say is your most prized possession overall?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I have a lot of original art, like some Jack Davis pieces. I have a lot of different things. Arthur Rankin gave me a wood carved fork and spoon from the puppet makers from Mad Monster Party. One is Frankenstein and one is Dracula. And he told me not to sell it. And, he gave it to me. It was a gift to him from the animators. So I guess one of a kind things like that would be things I would think about, as far as my favorite things. I have a collection of Captain Action stuff here that I like, even though that was before my time, because we had Migos when I was growing up. But I like all the Captain Action things, and a lot of people comment about my display, like they want to get one and they want to buy one. I've had some of my friends say that they want to come over and take pictures so that they can reconstruct one. So, it's just I like everything. I guess that's my problem. Um, I don't really want to get rid of anything, but if I did get rid of anything, I'd probably get rid of everything. Um, it's either all or nothing.
And we are back. So, what did you guys think of that? Rick collects a lot of stuff. We didn't get a chance to see everything in that frame, but he is surrounded by his collection. I think anyone who collects stuff would love to have that. I want a room like that. I just have a couple of shelves. That being said, he was really interesting to talk to. Some great stories. Rankin and Bass has been, a staple in the holiday season for decades. And it's, really fortunate enough that Rick has been able to research and document and write about all those experiences. So it was a great opportunity to talk to him. So we hope everyone had a great year, great 2024. We hope everyone has an even better 2025. And more importantly, enjoy your holidays. Stay safe. If you get a chance, rate, review, and subscribe, of course. But more importantly, spend it with your family. Have a great time. We'll see you next year.